Great. Thank you, Laura. Lots of Lauras in this session today. My name is Laura Lessard, and I am the Interim Program Coordinator for Delaware INBRE, and I'm happy to welcome you all to our session today. This panel is hosted by my wonderful, panelists are from my wonderful colleagues from across our region, a couple from across the country. And this panel is hosted by the Program Evaluation and Administration of Research Leaders Group. We call ourselves PEARL. And PEARL is a national group of evaluators and program administrators from IDEA programs. And we meet regularly to discuss and share and really support one another. The last talk in our session today will be about PEARL, provide you a little bit more information about the group and how you can get involved. And all of the presenters on our panel today are active members of PEARL, and we'd love to have you join our ranks. So just some housekeeping for our session today. You're welcome to ask questions during the presentations by typing in the chat box, and I'm going to monitor those and ask them to the panelists after each presentation. And you're also welcome during the question and answer session to raise your hand, and we can call on you to ask your own question if you'd like. As you saw when you joined, this session is being recorded and will be available on the NERIC website, along with all of the other recordings, I think pretty soon. So I want to, last thing of my intro, I want to thank Laura Bellavia, who's on this meeting from Rhode Island INBRE, and the rest of the planning committee for allowing us to participate in this year's meeting and to share some of our stories of program administration and evaluation from across the region. So that's what I have by way of introduction. We're going to start our session today with a wonderful colleague. I'm going to say that about everyone because everyone on the panel today is a great colleague. But my wonderful colleague from Maine, Chris Smith, who is the evaluation coordinator for Maine INBRE at the MDI Biological Laboratory up in a beautiful part of Maine. We all wish we were right now. So Chris is going to share some of her information, some of her experience evaluating bioinformatics training that some of the students from Delaware and other places have participated in. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris to share her screen and share her experience.
Great, thank you, Laura. Let's see. How's that look for everyone?
Looks great, thanks.
Okay, so today I'm going to just be sharing with you some information that we have about wanting to incorporate bioinformatics training as a rich experience for all learners, from our students in Maine INBRE as well as the faculty supporting those students in Maine INBRE. Here you see a screenshot of our first in-person course this year, College of the Atlantic students who are doing a combination of bioinformatics and laboratory work. And I'd like to first introduce you to the two co-directors of the Maine INBRE Bioinformatics Core. We have Joel Graber, who is based at my institution, the MDI Biological Laboratory, where he's a senior staff scientist and the director of the Computational Biology and Bioinformatics Core. And the other co-director is Ben King, who is an assistant professor of bioinformatics at the University of Maine. And they work together with their teams to help both our faculty and our students in research training. And so the first half, I'll just talk in general terms about the opportunities that we've had for our students in this most interesting prior 18 months or so. So the Maine INBRE has multiple ways for our undergraduate and community college students to gain research training experiences. The two that I'm going to touch on today are week-long in-person or virtual short courses, which are generally a week-long intensive course. And then we also have our 10-week summer mentored fellowships. And last year's 2020 Summer INBRE fellowships were all moved online. And for our short courses, we had 5 of those were online, and those were January through March. And we had 2 of those that were in person in March and May. And here is a screenshot of the Southern Maine Community College short course that was bioinformatics of limb regeneration, which was based on some faculty data that Jill Graber walked the students through some analysis work. And a lot of this was command line work. And bioinformatics really became very important in this last 18 months because it was much more transferable to the online environment than more bench intensive work. And so we're really looking at how to read the tea leaves, I guess, of how that bioinformatics work and how we can build on that for students. And this is a very small snapshot of a couple of pieces from our pre and post evaluations from both our short courses and summer fellowships. And students were asked both before and after their self-reported understanding of these topics. And it's a little bit complicated because I think particularly maybe for bioinformatics that students may think that they don't know very much in the beginning, and then once they learn more, they realize that there is really so much more to learn. And so I think that kind of tamps down a little bit the post-experience self-reported knowledge, but in general, we're happy to see gains. And when students are being introduced to the command line interface and to bioinformatics for the first time, the emphasis isn't solely on skill building, because we also want students to gain confidence and also see that this is part of modern biology work, that it might be a career path, it might be something that they want to take more coursework in. And so we really dug also through the open-ended comments in these surveys to see that students really were getting a lot out of these research experiences. And this will help us inform what else we might be able to offer and communicate to our students. And ultimately, this is really what we want to see. And kudos to both Joe and Ben and their crew for having them be universally a positive experience when students are working in the command line, because this could be a frustrating experience, but they know how to read a room and when to pump the brakes or add additional office hours for students so that everyone can be coming along at the same time. And what we hope is that by providing additional bioinformatics training throughout all of our research training opportunities, that what starts with a 1-week short course where students are introduced to a new topic, they go and they would like to learn more about this, and they are able to articulate that in their summer fellowship applications, and they want to work more and have that longer 10-week mentored summer program in bioinformatics. And so these 2 students had taken short courses as part of their Maine INBRE training, and they spoke to those in their applications for their summer fellowship programs. And then we also have some training for faculty of these students. There is a nice suite that we've developed, and they're not all supported by INBRE, but they build on the INBRE network. And the first of these is the Bioinformatics T3 Train the Trainer course, where Kelly Thomas, who's the PI of that grant, he's the Bioinformatics Core Director for the New Hampshire INBRE. And in this picture, this was taken just this past June. We have Tim Breton and Lori Banks, who are Maine INBRE project leaders, as well as Andrea Tilden, who's the Colby College Maine INBRE Steering Committee member. They were all in-person participants this past June. And then we have this other reproducible and fair bioinformatics analysis of omics data that has the 2 PIs of that grant are Bruce Stanton and Tom Hampton, who are both at Dartmouth College. And that built on a prior course, Applied Bioinformatics, which did have support from Maine INBRE. And then we also have the Maine INBRE non-model organism workshop coming up in November, which will be the 3rd time that that course is offered. And so we hope that by training these trainers and the faculty in our idea states, that they will be able to enhance the undergraduate and community college training for students and help everyone move along. And this Bioinformatics T3 course I'll use as an example of the evaluation that we've done in some of our other courses. And as I said, this is not directly funded by INBRE, but the goal is to support idea states. And you can see that more than 3/4 of the participants in the past 4 years of this course have come from idea states. And in addition to the traditional pre and post course evaluations and interviews, we have some follow-up surveys that we offer maybe a year after people have taken the course to see how it actually worked in practice when they brought their new skills back into the classroom. And also some semester reporting so they can update what courses they integrated their new skills into. And the evaluator of that grant, Karen Bielek, who is also at Dartmouth, she is integrating some social network analysis work so that we can see who people are talking to about bioinformatics who had participated in this program, both when they're talking about their research and also about curricula. And so those may be two different groups. And we wonder if who they talk to and how those social networks shift over time. Because one of the main goals of this grant is to build a community of learners. And so people can learn from each other what worked and what maybe didn't work quite so well with integrating bioinformatics into their existing course curricula. Oops, sorry. And I think for the, this was a follow-up survey for the participants of the online T3 course in 2020. Normally it's an in-person course, but of course it moved online. And so this was taken near the end of this 2021 academic course here. And I think like we saw with our own INBRE short courses, when people had to suddenly pivot from what they anticipated teaching into the online environment, that they really had these bioinformatics skills at their disposal now to fall back on to add to what they were teaching in the classroom. And you can see that across all of these different topics that people could pick and choose what would work well for their classrooms, and whether it was just BLAST, but are maybe some more metagenomic analyses. And so they were able to incorporate those in this past academic year. And just quickly looking ahead, one of the interesting things that came out of this past year was that Lori Banks, who I mentioned before, she's a faculty at Bates College, one of our partner institutions. She took both the Bioinformatics T3 course and also the Reproducible and Fair Bioinformatics course, one right after the other. And she took the second with her undergraduate, one of her undergraduate students. And I'd like to see how that worked for her and whether that's a model that we'd want to pursue and encourage for teachers to take some of these courses with their students, both to see how the students responded to the material and how they might work together on problems going forward. And we do want to see that there is an increase in bioinformatics and computational biology in our partner curricula, and that's something that we can work with our INBRE steering committee members to collect. And also, I'm curious for these students in the past 18 months who had this very intensive bioinformatics work. That was when our hand was kind of forced to do that, whether they are going to stay in the computational biology field more than their peers because they had more of an experience with that than their peers who would have taken a more standard bench oriented course that still had some bioinformatics, but not the a weak command line short course experience. And then just other indicators of change and interest in pursuing bioinformatics and computational biology as we move forward. And that's what I have. If you have any questions, please feel free to shoot those in the chat, or there might be a minute for one or two quick questions.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, we definitely have a few minutes for questions. Does anyone have any questions they want to pose? I have one if anyone does. Feel free to, I'll see, I guess I'd have to look at the participant list. If you want to ask your question in the chat box, you can. If you want to raise your hand, I can call on you. My question for you is, one of the things that we've wondered is whether and how we want to continue the remote learning, even when it's not necessary anymore, and kind of what works best and how to make those decisions. So has the virtual experience changed your views and the program leaders' views on, you know, whether we want to continue in person, or kind of how that might move going forward?
Yeah, and actually Joel Graber is speaking in a parallel session right after me, and he'll speak to those experiences. But he and I are talking about having that Minota course that's in this November. It had been first a one-day workshop in person, and then it was all online the year after that. And we're thinking about a hybrid where a lot of the work would be done ahead of time. People could watch some videos or have a combination of asynchronous and synchronous online work, and then culminate all of that in a one-day in person to kind of wrap things up in person and see how that works as a model. And we did have, for the students who participated in the online environment, that really worked well for some students, particularly for our Southern Maine Community College students who have work and home lives that are often busier than some of their peers. So we might try to have alternate years where maybe it's virtual one year and in person another. And we did have one student who has some health issues, who makes it hard for him to travel, and he was able to fully participate in that course, and he wouldn't have otherwise. So we certainly want to be able to support those students going forward.
Thanks. So I think we have time for one more question, and Lakshmi has raised their hand, so I'm going to see the floor.
Yeah, I just wanted to, hello everyone. This is Lakshmi from NIGMS. I'm managing some of the data science portfolio at within the DRCB. Again, just wanted to highlight that one of the things that we're having is a workshop that's coming up. I think John Larsh also mentioned. So I'll post it in the chat box for a link to register to the workshop. And also just wanted to get some feedback from people around, the cloud computing. Like, we have offered some courses on cloud computing with the service providers and all that. So any thoughts on, how those are going, or whether they found them beneficial, and, just in the cloud computing space, what your thoughts are. Again, I encourage you to share those within the RFI. I'm going to provide the link also here. And, anything you want to mention, you can, maybe talk or like even put it in the chat box. So I'll be monitoring that and use your feedback for that. Thank you.
Yeah, I know that Ben King is looking at some cloud computing and how to do some intensive cloud computing work with our smaller courses and smaller size institutions. So that's also a project that's ongoing right now.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the question. And I know, because in Delaware, we've looked at that RFI, and I'll pass along, as Lakshmi mentioned, that anyone can fill that out and represent their experience at different levels. And we've taken a look at it within our state. And of course, because I'm an evaluator, I want the data that you're collecting, because I want to use it for our own needs assessment, but that's a separate presentation. So if you have other questions for Chris, you can put them in the chat, and I'm sure she'll be happy to respond to them at that point. I'm going to move on to our wonderful colleagues from New Hampshire INBRE, among other INBREs, Danielle Vaklavic and Sharon O'Connor, who are internal evaluators that support New Hampshire INBRE and also, I believe, Rhode Island INBRE and a little bit of Vermont INBRE. They are all over the region doing amazing evaluation work. And so they'll share some of their alumni student mentoring work with you now. So I'm going to turn it over, I think, to Danielle.
Great, thank you for the very kind introduction. And I'm going to apologize in advance. It's been quiet here all day, and of course they're mowing my lawn right now. So there may be a very loud mower going by the window. Hopefully it will, they will spare me for 15 minutes while I talk with you all. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and then go into presentation mode. Okay, does everyone can see that okay?
Looks great.
Great. I'm going to hide my face. Okay. Hello, everyone. Like I said, my name is Danielle Vaklavic, and I'm a part of the evaluation team for New Hampshire INBRE Network. And I'm going to spend my allotted time today talking about a new opportunity we've been playing with for students this past spring and summer. And a commonality for a lot of the programs that work with college students is that if we're doing our job right, eventually those students are graduating and going off to do great and wonderful things. But oftentimes we're focusing on the students and not the students after they leave us. And while New Hampshire INBRE does track where our alumni end up, the program realized this last year that it was leaving one of its most valuable resources untapped, and that these alumni can and it should be a resource for current students. And with this goal in mind, the program reached out to some alumni to ask if they would be willing to have conversations with current students via Zoom. But before I get too much into that and the feedback that we've gathered from the students and the alum, I want to talk a little bit about INBRE as a whole and its goals, just so we're all on the same page moving forward, depending on what background you're coming to this talk from. So New Hampshire INBRE, or the New Hampshire chapter of the IDEA Network of Biomedical Research Excellence, is, as the name suggests, a network of colleges spread out across New Hampshire dedicated to biomedical research excellence. And this network is made up of two types of colleges: lead institutions that are research intensive, as well as our partner institutions that are primarily undergrad teaching colleges. And the goals of New Hampshire INBRE are to enhance the scientific and scholarly interactions within the network of colleges, build out the research infrastructure and training at each institution, provide research opportunities for students and faculty they wouldn't otherwise get at traditional teaching colleges, to expand the college's research culture, not just within the sciences, but also out into the Maine college community. And finally, build up New Hampshire's biomedical workforce and support students transitioning into said workforce. And it's this last one that I'm going to focus on today. For New Hampshire INBRE, this last year has really been the year of workforce development, with a particular focus on supporting students who are interested in learning more about private sector and industry jobs, in addition to the information that they're already getting about graduate schools. And in the 10 years INBRE has been in New Hampshire, the program has graduated almost 900 students. That's a lot of alum. And as I mentioned earlier, we do check in with our students 2 to 3 times in the 5 years after graduation to see what's up. And while not all respond to us for a variety of reasons, that could be a very interesting presentation in and of itself, we do hear from most of them. And we have data on 88% of our alum and where they are 5 years out. 52% are in the biomedical workforce. 15 have been accepted to biomedical graduate programs, and the other 20% have gone off to non-biomedical careers and further education. So looking at this breakdown, there's a strong interest among students in next steps that aren't the traditional apply to graduate school and work at academia. However, when you think about the influential figures these students are interacting with during their INBRE experience, they're disproportionately interacting with people who went to academia, i.e. their professors. This is where our alum can come in. These 52% can provide students with alternative examples and advice based on their experience that is different than the advice their faculty are able to provide. And it's not that we're discouraging them from going to graduate school. It's really the opposite, but simply providing them with a full menu of options that they can explore when they make the best choice for themselves. Now, let's talk about these conversations. The program reached out to our network of alum, and we're able to pair 9 alum with 34 students. And each of these students had a one-on-one talk with alumni. So we did have alumni talking with multiple students. We've done 2 ways of this so far, and we're planning on doing more. One in April, where we had these 9 alum talk with 19 students, and one in June, where 5 of these original alum spoke with 15 students. And after they did these conversations, we sent out a survey since we are the evaluation team, and we wanted to know, was this helpful? Was the pairing between the alumni and the student a good match? And what makes a good match? What did students and alumni talk about? Why did alumni agree to do this? They're very busy. And what should we tweak if we're doing this again in the future? So the overarching question, was this helpful? And it was a pretty resounding yes, both from the alumni and the students. What's a good use of your time? And when we asked the students, do you feel more prepared for life after graduation after having this conversation? Again, it was a pretty resounding yes. Now, it's a good use of time, but how well matched were the pairs? This is especially of interest to us since we didn't do any matching except for scheduling availability for these first 2 rounds. And all students and most alum felt that they were well matched with their conversation partner. And for these 2 over here that didn't feel like they were a good match, these were 2 alum who just felt a little bit unqualified to speak to the needs of some of the students they met with because they were in a different field and didn't want to give them the wrong advice. So into the more process planning question for future conversations, if we were to pair people more intentionally, how should we pair them? Was it important to have alumni from the same school as the student? And respondents were split down the middle for this. Some felt that it was important, others that there were more important things. And it should be noted, only 9 of our 34 students were matched with someone from the same school. So this could change moving forward. But in this sample, looking at the qualitative feedback, respondents who ranked their match less favorable didn't provide school as the reason it wasn't a good match. Students and alum felt that a good match, school can be helpful, but it's less important than an understanding of the student's major and desired career path. For one alum, they were a good match for some of their students because the students were science, chemistry, biology related students, but then they were matched with some psychology students, and that was just outside their realm of expertise. So in these conversations, what were they talking about? And the topics varied, but a good portion spoke about getting a job after graduation, such as reviewing the student's resume, talking about potential careers, what a career in industry looks like compared to academia, and the how to find a job, such as the importance of networking, interview tips, using a recruiter, and how to market yourself on LinkedIn and during interviews. And while the impetus of this conversation was this year's workforce development push, half of students did talk to alumni about grad school, whether as an option right after graduation or as something to come back to in a few years after being in the workforce. And all alum did tell their students that they could and should reach out again, and half said that they had connected with the student on LinkedIn after the conversation. So let's turn our attention to the alumni. These are busy people. Why would they agree to participate in these conversations? Not just once, but multiple times with multiple students. The alumni said it was pretty straightforward. INBRE asked, and they wanted to do a good thing. And reflecting on their own experiences in INBRE, they wished they had had a similar opportunity and felt that it was important to step up and provide this for current students. And it should be noted that while these conversations are focused on the needs of these students, the alum did feel they benefited from the conversations. It felt good to help somebody, and it gave them a confidence boost that, especially for early career alumni, that they realized they had something to offer students a few years behind them, and it made them feel experienced. And while less common, but still pretty frequent, they did enjoy hearing about what was going on at INBRE and felt re-energized by these conversations. So big takeaways from these two waves of conversations. Students and alum enjoy it, gave it a big thumbs up, and felt that they had benefited from these conversations and think these opportunities should continue. Now, they did have some recommendations, which we were specifically interested in hearing since this was a pilot of these conversations. And they asked us to provide more clear guidance about expectations for alumni and students going into the conversations, maybe some prompts and like potential topics for them to talk about so that they knew what they were getting into. And the alumni also suggested that students could do some pre-conversation work to get the most out of it, such as preparing questions and researching their conversation partner. Some students did get a little bit nervous, and alumni kind of felt like they were just rambling, and having the students have set questions would help them feel a little bit more confident as they're easing into the conversation. And again, this idea of matching students with similar alumni is something that we're going to continue to explore, whether that be by career path, by major, and potentially by school. And students also asked for a mix of alumni, both early career as well as senior alum who they could talk to. But the resounding request was, we would like to do more of this, and that this was helpful all around. And so I'm going to leave you with two quotes from our students who participated in these conversations. One student said, "My alumni gave me a good confidence boost and reminded me about imposter syndrome and that I do belong in science." And another said, "After talking to my alumni, I feel like I have more knowledge on how to prepare in the next month or so before I start applying for jobs." So both pretty good recommendations of this opportunity for students. So I'll go ahead and open the floor to questions.
Thank you, Danielle. Does anyone have, the participants can, again, as a reminder, you can ask in the chat box, and Danielle can read her question, or I can read it myself, or you can raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask a question. While people are thinking of their questions, I'll just say that this is the great work of program evaluation, right? That you partnered when they were starting a new program, that you asked really great questions, that you provided, program staff with really important and useful, actionable information that they can use to improve. This is like the best for, this is internal evaluation lived to its best potential. So it's really, thank you so much for sharing that experience, and be good to hear, in the coming years, how that program evolves, and to be able to take your suggestions.
Yeah.
So Tabitha has a question about whether you train the alumni in mentoring, or offer similar guidance that you might offer to the faculty mentors. And if not, whether you have plans to do that kind of training.
Yeah, and there was, in this initial round, there was no training or guidance really given to the alumni. It was mainly just to make this connection between the students and the alum, so they continue to do this mentoring. That might be something that we can explore in the future. as someone who has a background in mentoring literature, the alum are kind of seen as career advice and somebody who can come in and give advice, but they aren't necessarily filling that mentoring role the way a faculty member or someone in the lab might be filling that role. They could potentially step into an informal mentoring role, but it's more just to allow the students to get a good picture of what's going on, as well as to re-engage these alumni after they have kind of left the nest.
Great. And I think Caroline Miller Robinson, we have our attendees from all over the country. Caroline's from Arkansas asking about whether you thought about including this data in a publication.
I'm always down for a publication. It's not something that we have actively talked about. We've got a lot of irons in the fire right now with a bunch of different projects. This was mainly used just for internal self-evaluation for the program to see if this was something worthwhile as we build up this workforce development initiative.
Thanks so much. Do we have any other questions? I mean, something we could potentially add to the discussion at the end of the session is other folks sharing their own experience, either engaging with alumni during programs, after programs, kind of when and where and how that might. I think that's something, other programs might have ideas of things they've tried that worked or could have worked better. So if you have those, hold on to them. We can come back to that. If you have any other questions for Danielle and her colleague Sharon, I'm sure they can answer them in the chat or certainly follow up with them after the session. Excellent, thanks so much. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Tabitha now. So for some reason, I'm having trouble saying her name. Tabitha Finch is here with us. She's the director of the Professional Development and Education Core for the Vermont Biomedical Research Network, which is Vermont INBRE. She says she's not an evaluator, but she absolutely is. Always happy to present alongside with you in meetings. And go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Laura. Can you confirm that you see my presenter
Yes,
view?
they're great.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura, for the introduction. And as she said, I work with the Vermont INBRE called the Vermont Biomedical Research Network. And today I'm going to talk to you about a program that we have to promote collaboration and networking through our INBRE program. So first, let me tell you a little bit about our setting in Vermont. Our INBRE network includes the University of Vermont, which is our lead institution. And we have 5 baccalaureate partner institutions as shown on the map on the right. Those are located across the state, and those are small, primarily undergraduate institutions. They range from enrollment numbers of our 1,200 at our smallest school and up to 3,200 at our largest school. Because these are such small schools, we do frequently talk about our faculty as being on what we call academic islands. These faculty that we fund work in small departments, often with a broad focus. For example, at our state colleges, the faculty work a lot of times in a natural sciences department, and they might be the only biologist, for example, on their campus, or the only chemist. And so even if they are working at one of the larger schools that might have a more focused department, such as a biology department, even within that, they might be the only ecologist or the only specialist working on their particular study system on their campus. In addition, our faculty are at the primarily undergraduate institutions and have heavy teaching loads. Sometimes that can be a 4-4 load. And that makes attending conferences during the semester very challenging because they have a difficult time finding teaching coverage. So both of these factors really play into the creation of these, what we call academic islands for our faculty, that really hinders their ability to get critical peer feedback on their research programs. So one way we wanted to address this was to use the N in BBRN network. And so we came up with this idea of thematic research groups. Thematic research groups are defined as a group of researchers interested in collaborating and building on their research program within a given theme. And participation in these groups is not limited to our academic pilot and project awardees. It can also include researchers from industry and government. And interested investigators can submit a short application to VBRN for consideration by our leadership team. This application process is not meant to be burdensome. It's quite short. And we ask them to put together a small proposal that includes their group name, their proposed goals and activities, the members that will be in their group, and a budget on which activities they would like us to support. And a lot of these groups have evolved organically as our faculty meet each other through other VBRN professional development events. Usually a couple of faculty meet, discuss the idea, and submit a proposal to VBRN, and then pull in their additional contacts and the group grows, as I'll show in a couple examples. The first example we have is our disease ecology working group. And so this group actually formed back in 2017 out of a meeting from the Vermont Department of Health that was really focused on ticks and tick-borne diseases, which is of great importance and interest to the state of Vermont. And some of our pilot investigators were included in this meeting at the Department of Health. And so they talked to one another after learning about VBRN and being willing to support these thematic groups, and decided to expand the group to the theme of disease ecology so that they can invite in some other investigators from our network to join. And together they applied for VBRN support in 2018. And annually, they've been receiving funding from VBRN to support 2 meetings. This is how they've structured their particular thematic group. They have a methods-focused workshop, typically in the winter, that's for the PIs. And then they have a summer research symposium that includes the trainees as well. Membership currently includes faculty from 5 INBRE institutions, state researchers, and occasional out-of-state visitors. The out-of-state visitors can actually be really important. And so why I say there are occasional out-of-state visitors is because we have had instances where the members of the thematic group have had visiting colleagues for the summer, perhaps to do field work or to be on sabbatical or take advantage of summertime to work in one another's lab. And those out-of-state people have joined the summer research symposium, for example, that the disease ecology group has had. And it's just a really great example of how these groups can really pull together their outside connections to help one another get more critical feedback on their research programs. So the goals of the Disease Ecology Working Group are to enhance one another's research through critical and constructive discussion, to explore possibilities for joint projects, and to contribute to the professional development of all members, which includes the trainees and the lab PIs as well. I really enjoyed this photo because this is after one of the summer research symposium that was held on one of our BPI or PUI campuses. And the lab member was able to give a tour to the attendees of their lab. And so it's just a great example of how this really brings the faculty and trainees together in a really fun collaborative setting. So some successes for this particular thematic group include, this group has been running for 5 years now. They just had their 5th annual summer research symposium, and that event included 5 faculty from 4 institutions, a state government researcher, and both graduate and undergraduate students. These meetings in the summer are really important because oftentimes it's the first time the undergraduate student might be presenting their research to other professionals in a setting such as this. So it's great professional development for the students as well. We've also had examples where students that were part of this group were hired as technicians in other group members' labs. And so that's great for our PUI faculty who a lot of times will want to hire a technician to help them continue their research program during their busy academic year. So they can pull from an undergraduate trainee who might already have some experience in another member's lab. And it gets that trainee some great job experience for their career goals. And lastly, this group has led to the formation of a collaboration between 2 of our Lyme disease researchers. Those faculty are sharing data and pooling their data to put together a manuscript. And both of those faculty now have their own NIH funding. So they're of a great resource to one another. The second group that we currently have, which is newer, is called VIBES. And VIBES is the Vermont Initiative for Biological and Environmental Surveillance. This group started receiving funding from VBRN earlier this year, and it really formed in response to the pandemic. Members are very diverse. It includes faculty and students from 3 of our INBRE network institutions, 1 government agency, and multiple local municipal wastewater officials. And they all come together for the goal of conducting wastewater surveillance for the SARS-CoV-2 virus and develop wastewater-based risk assessment tools for COVID-19 and other environmental health hazards in Vermont. This group has been very active. They've been meeting bi-weekly, and we're really excited to see how they evolve and grow and expand, because we really feel this group has a great potential to submit some collaborative research proposals together and to work on some great manuscripts. So future steps for our thematic research groups is that we really would like to encourage more thematic research groups within our network. As we said, these do evolve usually organically, by bringing our faculty together for professional development events. We're very hopeful that in this next year, being able to have in-person events again will help to facilitate those conversations and collaborations. And thinking of some potential topics, looking at our network faculty, we could form thematic groups in neuroscience, psychology, and exercise science. We do also want to keep encouraging broader participation in groups. It would be great to see some industry connections and get some more industry people involved, as well as state government researchers. And lastly, we're working to set up the formal evaluation of these groups. We're working closely with Sharon O'Connor, who was just part of the last presentation. And we're working with her as to how we can better assess the effectiveness of how these groups are helping to rescue our INBRE faculty from their academic islands. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have questions for Tabitha? Again, with questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat or unmute yourselves. Whitney, I see your face. Did you have a question? You just want to say hi? Hello, nice to see you. Excellent. Do you think, I always have questions. Do you think that, you just mentioned you're looking forward to going back in person. Again, similar to my question from earlier, do you think there pros and cons to the virtual versus in person, and what stages of this project do you think work best for or really need to be in person?
Well, it's interesting because we currently have 2 of these thematic groups that are running. One formed from in-person meetings, and they did just have a hybrid symposium, which included some virtual presentations from people attending from other locations, and some people came together for a physical meeting. The VIBES group formed during the pandemic, and have people from multiple different offices across the state. And so they've been meeting online a lot. So it's interesting. It depends on, sort of what the topic is, but I do think that having online meetings has probably helped to sustain the groups once they've formed. I think it might be difficult to, more of a hurdle for our PUI faculty to maybe form a group. They might not get that natural, when you're at the water cooler and you're just talking to someone. Now they come together in our events, and it's hard to replicate that kind of natural small talk and informal meeting, I find, when developing these professional development activities for our faculty. But I do think it definitely has the potential, because we do have people from all across the state. This is definitely an avenue to allow them to continue to meet more easily.
In the interim. Thanks. Irina, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Hi, Tabitha. Nice to see you. So I know that INBRE Vermont achieved tremendous success in recent years in transitioning PUI faculty to other sources of support, specifically in HR 15 grants and NSF grants, etc. So what other approaches besides those focused working groups did you use to help faculty to transition to other sources of support? And how did you encourage PUI faculty just to apply, and what works for you?
Thank you for the question, Irina. Irina used to be our program officer, and I've enjoyed working with her the last few years on the success of our program. So we at the Vermont INBRE, we actually offer a suite of professional development activities for our faculty. Probably like many other INBRE programs, we have an annual grant writing workshop. And we've really tried to focus our professional development activities on very task-based gatherings. We've moved away from more kind of formal seminar, formal presentations, and we really like to have working events because our faculty are very busy. And when we do ask them to come together on a Saturday, we want them to leave with some sort of polished product. So for example, at our grant writing workshops, we might have some morning presentations. We've had NIGMS POs come in and offer information on like co-funding, for example. But also we split our faculty into working groups where they actually give each other the direct feedback and peer review of their specific aims pages, for example. So we offer that a lot every year to our faculty. And we found that, again, trying to get away from that academic island, our faculty need to be able to come together with peers and get that feedback from each other on their research programs. We do always encourage our faculty to apply, and our requirements of our pilot and project award funding does include gradual steps from publishing manuscripts and then going on to submitting the extramural grant applications. So that way they're continuing to make that progress and continuing along the pipeline and hopefully graduating and secure their own extramural funding.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tabitha. And Lakshmi had a question in the chat about whether the focus groups could be developed into cores.
That's really interesting, and we're looking forward to working with Lakshmi on our Vermont INBRE as well. So that's an interesting topic. We have not had that happen. We just have the 2 running groups right now, but it's definitely something to consider and think about. The success. I'm really excited for this new Vibes group to see. They're really on a hot button issue right now, and it's exciting to see. Hopefully they'll be able to get some data out of what they're doing and possibly go for some grants together collaboratively. But that could be an avenue where it evolves into cores.
Great, thanks. Any other questions for Tabitha about her work? Again, I'm sure she'd be happy to respond to additional follow-up questions in the chat. You can contact her. I know from personal experience, she's very good with her email and very responsive and very helpful and always helps me out when I need something. So I'm certain if anyone had questions for her about this program, definitely reach out. See, look, I can vouch for your responsiveness to email. Very good. Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to take off my moderator question hat and put on my presenter hat temporarily so that I can share with you some of our work from Delaware. And one of the things, in terms of, I'm going to be talking about capturing diversity. And if you were present at Monday afternoon's diversity, equity, inclusion session, that was focused on entrepreneurship, but really couldn't have done a better job myself at emphasizing why it's important to diversify the folks that are in the room, no matter the size of the room and no matter the room, if we're going to be able to successfully tackle the great challenges of our time. That was the case that was made by every presenter on Monday's panel, which I encourage you to take a look at the recording if you weren't able to attend that. So I'm going to build from that idea. In fact, I'm just going to kind of skip over why diversity is important and assume we all believe that. And kind of go in the nitty gritty a little bit about how we can evaluate our progress on expanding diversity. So having a diversity goal is really excellent, is an excellent first step, but without operationalizing and benchmarking against that goal, it's really challenging to make progress and certainly impossible to know that we've made progress if we're not measuring it. And so I want to talk about 3 things with my talk time today. A little bit about NIH's diversity statement and their definition of diversity, how I and our colleagues in Delaware INBRE have taken that definition and really put it to work. And I'll show some data from our programs about diversity from our student programs. So at the end, I have a couple discussion questions, if you wouldn't mind helping me out. And one of them is to think about or have a conversation about, if we have time, how we can best capture the diversity of our states. And that's not a typo. So our states, even within our region, are very different in terms of our population and what would a diverse room look like within each of our states. And then the other thing is, if other folks are willing to share the ways that their program measures diversity, I'm going to share the way, one of the ways that we've been looking at it in Delaware, and absolutely open to, excited about the possibility of someone having a better idea than we have had. So this is probably not a surprise to, or not new to any of you, that NIH updated their policy statement around diversity in November of 2019. And of course, this was not the first statement of theirs that really emphasized how important it is to diversify students, faculty, and across the continuum within the biomedical research enterprise. That was something that was made very clear in this and the preceding 7 or 8 statements before this one. What was new about this statement is the definition of diversity that they put forth. Prior definitions always had 3 buckets. Anybody that works with me knows I love a bucket metaphor. I always had 3 buckets. The first bucket was always individuals from racial and ethnic groups that have been underrepresented in health-related fields as designated by NSF. The second bucket had always been individuals with disabilities as defined by the Americans with Disabilities Act. And the third bucket has always been individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds. What's new about the 2019 statement is the definition of that third bucket. And so they provided this list of 7, and my numbers are hard to read, sorry about that. There are 7, I promise, items that an individual would need to have 2 or more of these items apply to them in order for that person to be considered as coming from a disadvantaged background. And I'm not going to read them, but if you just take a few seconds to kind of peruse them yourself, and even, just to help personalize it, maybe think about your own childhood and whether any of these items, applied to you as you were growing up. Quite a list, quite a variety. So I remember seeing this the day it came out and putting my evaluator hat on, being ready to jump into translation, right? So one of my roles in Delaware INBRE is to help us articulate our goals and then measure progress against our goals. So benchmarking progress against our goals. And diversity is a stated goal of our program, as I'm sure it is for many of yours. It's an explicit focus of our summer undergraduate research experience. And it's something that we really try to weave within really a wide range of our programs. And so I saw that definition and went through a process of translating that into like actual measurement tools, where we could actually measure things so that, again, we could benchmark against that. And so, okay, I started with this list of 7. When I look at the list of 7, the first 6 things seem like something you could ask someone. The 7th is a little bit of an outlier, so I'm going to come back to that 7th one later, but the first 6 items on this list seem like something you could ask someone. Now, you might want to refer to the full definitions or provide people a little bit more guidance or detail. So for example, the first item is whether the person was or is currently homeless. And in the full NIH guidelines, you can see it at the top here, it provides more information about what that means. So it says, go to this website. So I did. And then go to this definition. So I did. And the definition of homeless as provided by the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act is, I don't know about you, but beyond what I initially assumed counted or was meant by homelessness. And that was, partly obviously due to my own ignorance on the matter, but this definition is really pretty, it's broader than my own personal definition. So it was great for me to see that and to understand what the full range of experience is. So this includes things like sharing the housing with other people. So staying with friends or family because you didn't have alternate adequate accommodations, living in motels or hotels, again, because a lack of more adequate accommodations. And so it's a broader definition. And so in this translation process, I went item by item through the 6, went through the guidance that NIH provided, did the digging, did the clicking, read through that, to really understand what the full definitions of each of these are and translate that into an actual question on our actual survey for our students in our summer program, which is what I'm showing you now. And this is where I've currently landed with translation. We've used this question this year and last year. So the first thing you'll notice is that the top has a couple sentences with the why, right? The questions are a little bit odd without intro. The list is a little bit odd just out of the blue. And so we say specifically, our program is focused on this particular population. And so we want to understand how we're doing. And so we're very clear about why we're asking the question. The second thing that you'll notice is that we do not ask item by item for yes or no for each item. We provide the entire list, and then we ask how many of the items apply to them. The NIH definition says 2 or more. So I'm interested in creating 2 buckets, a yes, 2 or more, and a no. I don't need to know more details than that. And asking for more details would, likely seem more personal and more, of a social risk for someone to take. So I'm asking for exactly what I need, which is to create the 2 buckets. Another thing you might notice is that I rearranged the list from the prior slide, and I rearranged it so it starts with something a little bit less sensitive. So I buried the homelessness in the middle. I started with something a little bit less sensitive, right? About whether you're a first generation college student. That's a less sensitive thing to ask about than homelessness and some of the other questions on the list. And I also added, I've highlighted them in green just to illustrate, I've added a little bit of some of those definitions. So I went to the definitions and pulled out some additional details that I felt would be relevant to someone to be able to accurately report. And the answer choices for my question are no, none of them apply to me. 1 of them applies to me, and 2 or more, right? I'm just interested in creating those buckets. I'm not interested in knowing individual details. So I'm going to come back to that 7th item now on the list, which I don't know about you, but I don't know. As a matter of fact, as I'm sitting here, I couldn't tell you if I'm sitting in a rural health grant eligibility area or all this lingo, right? So this seemed like something that individuals couldn't just know off the top of their heads. And so I decided to do the translation work for people to make it easier for people to identify whether or not the 7th item applied to them. So I went to the definitions, which one of them is like a spreadsheet of zip codes. And the other is a searchable database. And I created maps for my state. So I'll show you a couple examples. This is our northernmost our northernmost county. It's called Newcastle County. It's where President Biden lives. And so I mapped that. It's not a rural, there's nothing rural about this particular county. So this shaded area is the medically underserved area as designated by CMS. So I did that. Our southernmost county, which is called Sussex County, that's where the beaches are. If anybody's ever been to the Delaware beaches, maybe NERIC 2023, we can get them down there by the beach. So the southernmost county has both rural areas and medically underserved areas. You can see that on the 2 maps. And when I overlaid the 2 maps, it's basically the whole county minus a tiny bit at the top corner and a tiny bit in the bottom corner. So after I did that work for my state, I translated that onto my survey questions. So in addition to the list I previously showed you, the list continues. And you can see I said, did you grow up in Sussex County outside of those 2 pieces? Number 8 relates to another one of our counties I'm not showing you. And then number 9, I literally just put the map in the Qualtrics survey. So are you from, did you grow up in this area that is shaded on this map? So again, that's me doing the translation so that individuals have an easier time of identifying whether or not the items apply to them. So we've used this, as I mentioned, for 2 summers in our Summer Scholars Program, which is our summer undergraduate research program. Special shout out to our Education Professional Development Core leader who was in the meeting today, Melinda Duncan, who does an excellent job running this program. So I'm sharing a little bit of data from this summer and last summer's program where we had 74 students each year. And just a little bit to illustrate what you're missing with the old definition and how we're doing, right, about benchmarking. When I've shared these data with my pro colleagues in the past, people have asked questions about missing data or people skipping the question. And I've actually seen little of that. So 4 skipped it last year, 4 skipped it this year, which is similar to how many people skip our race ethnicity question on our application. So that's a bit of a wash for me so far. I'd be interested in other people's experiences. So in terms of what we were missing, so I used our data to classify individuals on the quote unquote old definition, which was race, ethnicity, disability, and then low income, coming from a low income family. So we also still ask those questions so we can kind of compare. And so you can see the new definition does result in a greater number of our students being classified under this definition. And most of the difference is due to Asian and a few white students who met 2 or more of the criteria from the list. So, how are we doing? This is a major focus of our program, and it's about half of our students. I'm not sure that 2 bars of weird COVID summer program not a trend to make, but we're committed to this, and we'll continue to benchmark ourselves against this moving forward. So that's all I had to share. Back to my discussion questions, whether anyone has thoughts on how to best capture that diversity of diversity. And if anyone is willing to share with me either now during this meeting or certainly via email later, ideas about how their program measures diversity, I am always open for quality improvement on our evaluation endeavors. So I will stop sharing and see if there's any questions. Caroline.
That was terrific as always. Thank you for sharing that. I love your map overlay so much. I think that's really an intuitive thing for students to understand and to click and respond. How would it work if there's an institution in your network that has students come from a wider range, though? Some of our partner institutions do have students who come from all over the country, and then the College of the Atlantic that's in Bar Harbor really has a very international presence. And so I think it would be a challenge to make a map essentially for all 50 states, and then also interpret those guidelines for international students. And I wonder if you have any thoughts on how we could use your success and build it out a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny, I made a much longer presentation and then I practiced and it was way too long. And in my much larger presentation, I actually looked up the maps for all the New England states. So you could see just how much of all of the states in New England are covered by one or more of those definitions. So, almost all of New Hampshire, almost all of Vermont, almost all of Maine, other than like Cumberland County. I mean, like most of your states are classified as rural. I didn't even get to layering on the other one because it was such a great proportion. Okay. So, so that, there's that. But also in terms of the out-of-state students, we actually have that issue too. Again, I was trying to simplify my story a little bit. The reason I ask the one item applies to me as an answer choice is if the student didn't grow up in Delaware, I ask for their zip code and then I hand check those against the 2 criteria, which didn't happen that much for us. And that's why I maintain the 1, because I count their 1 and then I use the zip code to see if they get their other 1, if that makes sense. But that was like labor intensive for me, but it only applied to like 4 or 5 of our students. So I think that's a solution if you're talking about a small number of students. And I know our wonderful colleague Jessica out in Nevada does that with her application. She just does the zip code and then she does the checking because she has a wide range.
Those students ever ask about the broad grow up in part of it, if students have kind of moved around which place they should choose? Or
I think the more any of us, and again, I'm really interested in other folks' experience as well, but the more any of us sort of live with this definition, and again, this is not an IDEA program definition. This is an NIH-wide definition. And I, if there are NIH colleagues with us still, I'd love to speak with anyone at NIH who has experience with other programs operationalizing this definition, because I'm sure somebody's doing it better. Somebody's doing it better than me. And being able to identify the grew up in, and how do you do that? That's exactly the language they use. That's exactly the language I use. And I just let that ride. I mean, myself, I grew up in 5 states, so I don't know how I would answer that question. So thank you for that. Caroline, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Actually, I had the same question as Christine, but I also had another question. We've included this question in our annual progress reports. So we are also questioning faculty, not just students, because a lot of our faculty come from all over. Have you thought about expanding this into faculty? And the other thing is we're collecting it, but there's nowhere to report it to NIH that we are collecting it at this time. So I don't know where. Are you including it in some of the text of your annual reports? Where are you including this data?
Yeah, so the second part of your question first, and then I already forgot the first part when I was thinking about
You're including faculty.
Oh, yes. Okay. So reporting to NIH, I mean, within the narrative section of our reports, we've only been doing this for 2 summers. So we obviously haven't reported on this summer's data yet. And we just produced like an external facing student report that has the new definition included. So I think we have included it in like the narrative component of our reports. And in terms of faculty, and again, this is NIH, NIH says this for everything, but also within Delaware INBRE, it's important for us for everything. So we've started with the students, and I think we should absolutely be using a similar question with applicants for our pilot grants program and everything, right? If we want to diversify everything, we have to measure diversity everywhere. We haven't done that yet, but I think that we should. And I think it'll be an interesting translation experience because some of the questions are about early childhood, like whether your mother received WIC benefits.
Right.
And I'm not certain that older adults know that or remember whether they received the free and reduced price lunch for 2 or more years when they were in school. So I think if you're using it with faculty, I would love to talk to you about your experience with that and whether the questions kind of work out or not.
They were answered. Surprisingly, everyone answered it. So
excellent.
I have not calculated the data. I haven't looked at the data yet on those questions. And we've only done it 1 year. This our progress report for our year 19 progress report.
Thanks. Cole, I see you have your hand raised. Did you have a question?
Yes. So this is awesome. I love the way you framed the question, and I really loved that it was about the numbers, so people don't have to be forthright with information that's definitely sensitive. What are you doing about the culture of inclusion, though? Because it's one thing to bring in diverse candidates and diverse students, but that cultural impact has so big. If you bring in diverse students and faculty to a toxic environment, that's really no better than staying vanilla. So what are you guys doing in those efforts?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, strongly encourage everybody to go back and watch Monday afternoon's panel if you weren't able to. They just did such a wonderful job at being very honest and forthright about how important it is to have the goal and then how important it is to keep going, right? Like the goal is not enough and to keep going beyond that goal. And anytime you bring new voices in, the room itself has to change and will change in order for the voices to be there. I think one of the panels from Monday, again, I'm just reliving it for you guys, said, you have to recruit, retain, but also engage individuals at the table once they're there. It's not enough for them to be sitting there. They have to be talking. And so I think, that's sort of the metaphor to your point. And I am an evaluator by training, and the evaluation lives in my life, in my role, and not the program component. I will say that I know that it is something that that our education professional development core and the team that leads our programs, when we're talking about student programs, it is something they absolutely are working on in terms of training for faculty, in terms of conversations, hard conversations about that. They do a lot of like near peer mentoring. So having students work with graduate students and postdocs in addition to the faculty and other things like that, and providing training and support for other students, because the culture within a lab is not only determined by the faculty leader or leaders of that lab, but also by the others that are around. And I know that those are all training experiences that they provide. I don't want to speak for them, but I would say, as with all of this diversity, equity, inclusion work, no matter how much you've done, you're not there. You know, like no matter what you've done, it's not enough. And I'm sure I could speak for our EPD core director who's in the session and can correct me if I'm wrong when I say it's a commitment of hers and a commitment of our program. And I'm being recorded, so you can hold me to that.
But one thing, I will launch in because I have come up here. One thing about it is that one thing that Laura has done in relation to assessment is that she's actually asked for the students' feelings and opinions about what their experiences are. And I think that the data from that's really telling us that we don't have general problems with toxicity in work environments for diverse students. I mean, our program runs 50% plus diverse over the years using all the various criteria out there. And I think these students really have great experience. Our feedback is that the students really get a lot out of this program. And we really haven't run into the stereotypical toxicity that we talk about. Now, that said, you know, all of our institutions have a long, I've been at the University of Delaware for 20 years, and we've done a lot of really heavy lifting related to diversity and inclusion. And just as an example, I'm in a department that when I was hired, we had more faculty members named Dave than we had female. 20 some years later, we have had 2 female chairs and our department is majority female. And that's just one very small example of, you know, what happens over a 20-year period to diversity and inclusion issues. And I think that we maybe don't give the scientific community enough credit about how much progress has been made. I'm old enough to appreciate the vast amounts of progress that really have been made on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think it's okay for us to pattern ourselves on that, to be perfectly honest. And the surveys bring that out, that our diverse students are really getting great experiences.
Thanks, Melinda. Melinda Duncan is our Education Professional Development Core leader for Delaware INBRE and faculty at the University of Delaware. And, you know, I didn't pay her to say that last bit, which is, how do we know that our diverse students are having those experiences? We ask these questions and we cross the question, you know, we crosswalk and do crosstabs of making sure that different groups of students are having the same experience. I think one of the data lessons of the DEI world is that you need to disaggregate your data in order to find patterns. And it's something that we're able to do with this. I could talk about this till the end of time, but we need to move on to our next presenter. And I'm happy to talk about this, you know, offline at a future time in a future meeting. It's something we have talked about at a Pearl meeting. Here's my segue, Devin. It's something we talked about at a Pearl meeting in the past. So for those of you that were not here at the top of our session, this session is hosted by the Program Evaluation and Administration of Research Leaders Group, which is a national group of evaluators and administrators from IDEA programs, not limited to INBREs, which most of our presenters today are from INBREs, although Devin is not. And so, you know, because Pearl has been so instrumental in our work and in the formation of this panel, we want to invite everyone who's interested in this topic by virtue of your presence here today to learn a little bit more about Pearl and how you can get involved. And so while any of us could talk about Pearl, we have invited one of our wonderful colleagues from another region. So Devin Crawford is with us today to share a little bit about Pearl and how you can get involved with Pearl. So Devin is the center administrator of the Rural Drug Addiction Center, which is a COBRE at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And along with her, I believe silent but ever-present co-presenter, Julie Benson, who is the program administrator for Alaska INBRE at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And so Devin, I'm gonna turn it over to you to recruit some more folks to Pearl.
Well, I'll give it a go. Can you see my screen all right, Laura?
Yes.
Super. Well, I want to first of all, thank everyone. It's been a fantastic presentation this afternoon. And part of why I love Pearl is exactly this type of sharing and conversation that I'm going to hopefully be able to convey to all of you who are here who might not be familiar with Pearl. I do want to thank Julie. She's not here. She's actually moving her daughter into a dorm for starting college. So I wish her well. She texted me earlier and said they were on the search for her dorm building. So hopefully they have discovered it and are moving forward there. But Julie did help with the presentation. And so I'm very grateful to her advice as well as Laura and the rest of the team. So I'm here just to kind of talk about Pearl, introduce Pearl. I'm happy to do that because I have gained so much from Pearl. So just to give you a little bit of background about me, to keep the afternoon hopefully light and exciting since it's the end of the day. My background's in sociology. I'm actually a University of Nebraska Lincoln graduate. I did my undergraduate and graduate work here. I was previously a research assistant, a teaching assistant, and a project manager on multiple different NIH funded awards. And the way that I describe my job right now when people ask me is I just solve loads of administrative problems. So for those of you who do this type of work, that might ring true to what you do as well. So the reason that I'm here actually today, the true reason is that I met Julie in person from the Alaska INBRE. I was in Oklahoma. It was June. It was hot. It was just 2 months after we had received our notice of award in the summer of 2019. There was a presentation. I must have looked very terrified because Julie came up to me after the talk and introduced herself and invited me to join Pearl when she found out that I was involved in the COBRA here at Nebraska and we had just gotten funded. And so the rest is history. And I love to share this photo when I talk about different things where I'm just confused because this is pretty much how I felt the entire first year that I was trying to figure out the COBRA mechanism and try to work my way through the idea of programming and what we were supposed to be doing because it was brand new to me. I had no experience. And so although I had managed projects, this is a very different type of management structure. And so I was so grateful because the Pearl group took me in immediately, sent me examples of things, sat on the phone with me, which I'm going to talk about to provide guidance and expertise and suggestions. And so that really is a huge reason why I think that we have been successful in our first years of COBRA funding. So a few questions about Pearl. Who's Pearl? So Pearl's a network of idea evaluators and administrators. We have representation from various phases of idea funding and also mechanisms, as Laura mentioned. The network began informally among Western idea programs in about 2014, based on my conversation with folks that have been involved from the beginning. And this has expanded in 2016. There was a lot of invitations to other regions, and this has just continued to expand in the few years that I have been involved. The group provides an opportunity to share general idea programming information, also make announcements, update each other on recent programmatic changes at NIH. And our members are diverse in background and experiences. The programs include INBRE, COBRA, IDEA CTR, STTR, and more. All about us, what is Pearl? So members participate in informal group meetings. We provide support to one another through independent discussions. We answer general questions. We send out questions on listservs frequently. We share resources and materials to really increase program efficiencies across the idea programming. It really does provide an entire group of colleagues that you can ask questions who have knowledge and experience. And without a lot of the information that I had learned through Pearl in my first year in particular, but even post that, I would have missed deadlines and notices and different changes that happened because it was just so much information to take in there at the beginning at once. So I just want to thank all of our friends at Pearl who spent time on calls to help me get started. And I also just want to open up an opportunity if anyone else on the panel or anyone else in this session wants to share any quick, brief experiences that they have gained from being a part of Pearl with the rest of the group.
I know.
Go ahead, Tabitha.
I know, Devin. So something that a recent example is last year we wanted to start funding clinical trials for our pilot project awards. And we really relied heavily on our Pearl group friends to discuss what we needed to ask in our FOAs of our pilot project awardees so that we could get those, funded and approved. And so specifically, I actually crossed idea lines and worked a lot with COBRE people, specifically in Nevada, to get some input on that. And that was a huge help for our program and our faculty.
Yeah, that's a great example, Tabitha. Thanks. Laura, did you have an example as well?
I did, because, while a lot of us were together before COVID, during COVID was a huge time of support that we gave to each other. We all read those flexibilities in a different way, getting different answers. That was, having this support and help got me through that, and how to keep my labs open, and what was I going to do when they shut down. And, we just helped each other through that. And I thought that was a huge, huge support for me. I got here to Rhode Island INBRE through New Hampshire INBRE. So, I do know a lot of the players. I wasn't part of Pearl in New Hampshire because I was at PUI, but I was heavily involved with New Hampshire INBRE. When I got to Rhode Island INBRE, I realized Sharon O'Connor was the evaluator here. So I had a friend already when I got here. So, this group has really been a huge support for us. The other thing is I want to say is we also help each other with other things, like putting on this virtual conference. We're using Metro Connections. Kansas used them, and I talked to them. How did it go? What should we do? We ended up using them, and I'm sure there's other idea states that might use them in the future. And I'm certainly willing to help them and help them navigate the process and how to get that done. I don't want to be here to plug a pie star, but again, that's another program that we're all using. How did we help each other get to the point where we are with that program? And that's going to continue. As we find things that we all need, we're going to continue that and continue to support each other in that and make those things better as we keep on going. So I'm grateful for sure.
Yeah, that's a great example. The COVID example in particular, Laura, is a great example. I totally agree. Even just the social support of being able to just be together and share during that time was incredibly valuable. So anyone else have anything they'd like to share with the group before I keep moving on? All right. So in terms of where Pearl is, Pearl is really across the entire United States and in the contiguous 48 outside of that, including Puerto Rico. We have a nationwide network that includes faculty and staff who work in various areas of administration for IDEA programming. IDEA programming is supported, as I mentioned, in 23 states and Puerto Rico, and it's broken up into regions. I really hope I got all of these correct: the Western, Central, Northeast, and Southern, and the states and Puerto Rico that are represented in each of those regions. So when is Pearl? Pearl meets once a month right now via Zoom for informal discussions on various topics. Right now we meet the third Wednesday of the month at 1 p.m. Eastern, that's noon Central, for 1 hour, but many of us stay on the calls much longer than that. A lot of times we have other small group conversations that kind of spill over past that meeting, which has been incredibly helpful as well. The Pearl group frequently rotates discussion on 3 topics. We usually talk about evaluation, administration, and collaboration, but then we also have placeholders for other wildcard topics or other emerging topics. For example, with the administrative supplements that recently came out, we had many conversations throughout our Pearl meetings around the administrative supplements, helping each other, creating efficiencies, kind of discussing different things regarding those. And that was very emergent because they came out with a very quick turnaround. We also have other professional development workshops during the year when our schedules permit. We recently had a half-day event where we were able to kind of share with one another on different things that we were working on, again, focused on evaluation and administration and collaboration. So here's some examples of some recent Pearl meeting topics, just in case you kind of want to get a flavor for the different things that we discuss. So recently we've talked about approaches to evaluating undergraduate research programs, how to plan and implement virtual undergraduate research programs, ways to evaluate mentoring, collaboration across idea programs, many more. As I mentioned, the administrative supplements that recently came out, we share notices with one another to kind of make sure that we don't miss those as they come through as well when there's programmatic changes. So it's very valuable where that is concerned. In terms of why I would say to join Pearl, and this has been mentioned by many folks already on the call, I think that it's a great professional development opportunity for administrators really at all levels of their career. I've been at the university in some capacity as a student worker through today since 2002, which I can't believe is possible. But, you know, it's been so great to learn so many things from so many folks who have so many varied experiences at their institutions and other institutions. It really does push idea programs to new ways of administering and evaluating programming and science. Our Pearl colleagues offer one another help, support, collegiality, and it really does provide a valuable resource. You know, I think that our positions a lot of times are very unique. Our roles in what we do, what we manage, what we're responsible for is really challenging to explain when people ask about our professional careers. And it's nice to get that level of support from a lot of folks who know exactly what you're doing without having to try to explain it. And it's a perfect example when I was talking to Julie about this presentation. There are so many synergies in what we all do, whether it's COBRE, INBRE, IDEA, CTR, or other programming, that there's just kind of an understanding. And that does help when you're trying to explain why something is challenging because there's that kind of shared understanding of what you're working on and kind of the breadth and the scope of what we do. So we share example documents with one another. We act as a sounding board for ideas and questions. We provide documentation of best practices, many of which have been shared today during the session. We assist with kind of problem solving. We're just a network of, hey, this is going on. Do you have ideas of how to solve it? It's very supportive and very friendly and very collegial, which I really do appreciate. It provides a social network that would just otherwise not exist for those of us that do this type of work. So here's another tangible example of some recent collaborations of a cross-state evaluation where Pearl members collaborated to identify core metrics for evaluating summer undergraduate research programs. This was presented at regional and national meetings and also published in the Journal of STEM Education. And you can see all of those that collaborated here, many of them on this call. So that's one kind of tangible example of how we work together as a network. So at this point, you might be saying, Devin, how do I join Pearl? I hope you are. And if you are, we'll put the link in the chat. Maybe Laura, I don't know if you might be able to help me with that while we're
already done.
Thank you. You are awesome. So putting the link in the chat, and just a quick note, Pearl does not accept membership applications from vendors. And if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to Pearl network members and we can help answer any of those. But if you do have any other questions about joining the Pearl community, reach out to any of today's panel members. I'm always happy to help. Julie Benson, if you know her from Alaska, has a wonderful experience and answers questions on Pearl as well. And I really hope that you join us. So thank you for your time and thank you for joining us for the entire panel. And on behalf of Pearl, I hope to see you at the next upcoming September meeting.
Thank you, Devin. Really appreciate that. I did put the link to sign up for our email list in the chat there. Happy to have you participate unless you're a vendor. And feel free to pass it along to other colleagues, you know, within IDEA programs in your state. Again, just, I mean, we're all obviously fully drank the Kool-Aid, all the panelists, because that's how we came together and how we work together. But one of the things about Pearl is, you know, that we're a force, you know, we're a force. We get together, we do things, we do tangible things like help each other with forms. You know, we do long relationship things like that paper. That was multiple years of us working together on something. And so we, you know, it's a space to do that collaboration. I'm pleased that there are so many Pearl members from other regions on the meeting today whose names I recognize in the participant list. This is actually the only Pearl hosted session at any of the regional meetings this year. And we're so grateful again to Laura Bellavia and her team from Rhode Island for giving us this venue to share this work. And, you know, happy to have the Northeast region lead the way on Pearl, as we like to do. So that's, I think, what we had to share with you today. Obviously, if folks want to stick around for discussion, have additional questions, feel free to ask them, to pose them, to share them now. Or
I will add that I really liked when we were all in quarantine and in the last year, and we were having our Pearl meetings, and we would introduce ourselves and say what the weather was like outside our homes, or what we were hoping to do that coming weekend. That was part of the social network that Devin talked about, and I think having those exchanges really lays a good professional foundation for when we're reaching out to each other for information, that we know who it is that we're reaching out to, and maybe who to best direct our questions to, and that it just it makes for, as you said, a really collegial atmosphere that everyone helps everyone else as much as they can, I think.
Yeah, it actually reminded me of Tabitha's discussion about the sort of islands that the PUI faculty can be on. And I think, you know, Devin's experience also kind of like that same idea of feeling like you're an island. You're the only internal evaluator. You're the only program administrator for your COBRE who also has to do evaluation and also has to do all your reporting. And oh no, I don't know how to do compliance for manuscript and all those things that are really complicated. And that this is a place where we feel like we're not an island, where we're actually part of this larger community. And that paper, not to harp on it, I'm really proud of it because it just finally was published a couple of weeks ago. You know, was us working together. We're not an island. We were one thing together. 11 states participated in that project, and including many that are here on the call today. And always looking for other projects like that. If you have ideas for cross-state collaboration, you know, bring them to Pearl. That paper started as like a random conversation I had with Ramona Stone, who was the internal evaluator for Kentucky INBRE many years ago, and just evolved. And so, you know, as you're having, you know, as you're thinking like, oh, why am I reinventing the wheel on this thing that everyone else is doing? Pearl is a place where we frown upon the reinventing of wheels. So any other thoughts or comments or stories that anyone wants to share? Otherwise, I think we could all do with more time in our day, right, Laura?
I could. This was my last session. You know, we had 639 registrants for this meeting, which I think was quite a lot.
Excellent.
For any regional. Thank you.
Excellent.
It was a lot of work, but it was fun. It was fun. Everything went really smoothly. So I'm glad we could do this too.
Great.
Let's hope we can be on the venue at all the regionals in the future.
Yeah. Thanks, Laura. Feel free to reach out to me or anyone about Pearl. If you lose the link, just, you know, Google Delaware INBRE and look me up, or any of the colleagues here from within your state or across the country. We're all very, obviously we're here because we want to share our experience. So, all right. And with that, I'm going to end our wonderful session. I think that's the end of the conference even.
It is.
Thanks, everybody.
Tabitha, tell Alicia I'm going to answer her, okay? I promise. As soon as I'm done, I'll answer Alicia. I know she sent me some questions about RPPR.
Laura, when are the recordings going to be posted?
So yes, everything's going to be posted. PDF, I don't know about these PDFs, but we can certainly make them available on our website. But all the recordings from all the other sessions for the past couple of days are going to be posted on the portal, but they will only be there for 30 days. And that clock already started ticking. But we're going to then move them all over to our website, and we can just keep them on there for however long we want, probably until, you know, the next NARIC. But yeah, we will have them on our own website, but it'll probably be in about a month. But for now, they will be on the portal for the next 30 days. And I think they're starting to move those over by the end of the week.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think I got a couple of the slides from here, but if you want me to post them, you can send me the rest. Anybody who didn't send me their slides.
This is Janine from Alaska INBRE. Who is managing the member application for Pearl?
I thought it was you.
It's not me. Maybe Julie set it up, but
no,
I don't know.
Isn't it Julie?
I don't think so. Okay, it has our old logo. That's what I was wondering. Okay, well, I'll figure it out. Julie probably knows.
They revamped it like about a year ago, right? Wasn't it a year or so ago that they revamped it? So whoever was in charge of that.
But I thought that was Julie who did that, right?
Mm-hmm. Julie's not here, so let's say it's Julie and tell her she's in charge now.
That's it. She's not here. It's Julie.
It's somebody through NMSU. New Mexico?
New Mexico?
Laura Haas? But Laura Haas,
she's gone.
Retired. I know, but this could have maybe been the last thing she did before she retired.
Okay, well, I'll figure it out.
And then, sorry. I don't know, Tabitha, was it you that talked about the focus groups? So Lakshmi from the NIGMS posted a question, and then before we could get to it, he had to go. So I don't know if somebody wants to answer him. Who was talking about focus groups? Was it Laura?
I am meeting with him on Friday, so I'm sure we will discuss it.
Perfect. All right. And I think all the rest are okay.